Awesome. Dan, thanks for jumping on today. Excited to be able to
Yeah.
talk with you about the Zero Click New York recap with Profound. I know you were up there, we were able to go in and kind of see the sessions, meet different people. But maybe before we get started, just quick background. I know you've been doing a lot within the AEO
Yeah.
space. Yeah, let's go from there.
Yeah. So my background, it's been in marketing technology. It's been in enabling the actual use of marketing technology within enterprise, across the board. Uh, I think what I see now, and what I've been focused on in the last, few months has been, yes, we have AI that's changing the way that everybody thinks. But where are the impact points?
Mm,
Yes, there's some of that's how we work on the day to day.
exactly.
Like what are the efficiencies we can get? But then we start to see where AI is getting built into different products. And then where the implementation, different products or even segments now change the way that marketing is going to work. So for years and years, everyone was concerned with search engine optimization, SEO. And now we see all of the major search providers providing a flavor, or in the case of Google, really just going all in,
Yep.
largest update in 25 years to search
Yeah.
on agentic engine optimization, AEO, many different names for it right now. But
Yep.
ultimately, the idea of how do these agents start to bring back answers for folks, whether they be, somebody that's looking to buy a pair of skis in a B2C world, or a buyer at a large enterprise looking to invest
Yep.
in some sort of software. So absolutely changing the dynamic of how we're going to market. And there's even more to that. We'll get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
You've got OpenAI dropping ads in ChatGPT. That's like a space that, I mean, it's like barely even birthed. So yeah, very exciting. But that's been kind of the attention as of late.
Awesome. And like I know there's been a lot of people talking about Profound, and I was able to go to the Profound Zero Click event in San Francisco a couple months ago. What was the focus of Zero Click New York?
Yeah, I think there really was this thesis point that underpinned the entire event. Um, and to really make this make sense is like you've got customers there, you've got agencies that are adopting Profound. You have folks that are on the fence, still trying to learn. But the real kind of theme was that zero click as a concept, the idea that the funnel that we've all known for so many years um, is now it's more than just an idea. This has now become a reality, and we're starting to see this play out within just everyone's behavior now that AI is kind of percolated into search, it's percolated into the buyer's journey. And with that kind of reality of zero click is now this is the new future.
Yep.
It's not even the new future, it's the current. And it's just going to kind of grow from there. How do businesses, brands, marketing practitioners start to adjust to this new reality? How do you start to build in a way where the expectation is that it's everything everywhere all at once? And this is a thing that humans, we just can't do, right? Like we can't, even if you could just stay up all night for a full week, which, at that point you're going to be fried. You couldn't be able to produce at the rate that's necessary to really feed this new beast. So what does that look like? What are the tools? What are the techniques that are forming, that are being, perfected, that are available even today to be able to meet that goal of kind of everywhere,
Yeah.
all the
Everyone.
time, all at once. So that I think was kind of the big thesis point. If there's any one thing people are taking away is like, wow, okay, everything's changed. Now, I might argue that most people going into that room kind of already knew this, But the big next question is, um, okay, how extensive is it? How much change has happened? And then, um, how do I actually deal with it? Right? Like,
Yeah.
how do I go and adjust my marketing organization? Or if you're an individual contributor, you're actually working on how do I change my workflows? What are the new tools I need to adopt? So that's kind of like the big, in a nutshell, like if Profound's looking for anyone to walk away with a theme, that's it. This
Mm.
is now, this isn't an idea anymore. This is
Uh,
reality.
it's wild how quickly it's changed as well. Because I mean, this time last year, you're starting to hear sort of rumble. Like, yes, everyone was using AI, and there's rumblings of, what the impact would be on search. But there weren't as many like articles or, like sort of acronyms of this stuff. Like now it's AEO, GEO. I mean, there's lots of different ways of
Yeah.
calling it out. And even for what you were just talking about, how it's reshaping the not just the tools that we're using, but how organizations are working with them. And, something we had talked about before we jumped on a little bit earlier today is, Profound has been introducing this role of the marketing engineer. And I would just start really broadly. What did you hear about this new role? And then, second is like, what do you think is the reality of
Sure.
like that role within companies and maybe where we are within that journey?
Yeah. The reaction I think is really positive. I think that this has been a moment in time where pretty universally, whether you're a practitioner, a manager, Brandon or whatever it is,
Yep.
you're kind of like, yeah, that's the thing. That's the job that I couldn't quite explain that I
Yeah.
need. Even on like the IT side, right? For years, and I experienced this at NCR Atleos where, okay, they don't really want to be in the marketing day to day, but they also realize that there's a technology
Yeah.
mandate that they have to provide some level of support. Ultimately, that's where I came in and kind of bridged that gap. And in many ways, when I hear a term marketing engineer, that feels very apropos. It feels like, okay, somebody finally named the thing that I did for better part of my career. But um, it does feel like there's a very clear agreement. Yes,
Uh,
this is it. This is a good name. It finally kind of gives a real explanation. Um, and then a generalized sentiment of like, yeah, that's the future. We're going to
yeah.
need those marketing engineers. Now, my feeling on it is that we're still super, super early. Um, and yes, there are examples. Like I saw a Figma listing, I think maybe in the last few days, where it was like they're hiring a marketing engineer.
Yep.
Great. Like everyone looking for a job that has a MarTech background is applying to that job. So
Sure.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're hitting 6 digits worth of applications for a role like that.
Yeah.
Um, just with the way the economy is and kind of the reality of where we are. But with that being kind of like the state of things, what I'm really waiting to see is when marketing engineer or very similar job descriptions start to percolate beyond the kind of like unicorn, you know, uh, San Francisco Bay Area, you know,
Exactly.
darlings, right? Um, Anthropic puts that out. Okay, everyone's going to go crazy and wild. Awesome, cool. It's a good indicator of where things are going because that means that all of the other folks are going to start looking at that and say, okay, that's a skill set that I need, and I'm not certain that I have it. Um, or they may start searching internally for people that are close to it.
Mhm.
But again, until we start seeing a bit more real listings, and then also not just one, right? It's great
Sure.
that there's like a listing with Figma, but okay, it's one role. Um, what when are we going to start seeing multiple roles? Because as we talked a little bit, I'll kind of share some of the stats on this. Everything is truly this demand of like everything everywhere at once. And even using agents, building workflows, it's it's still something where there's going to be a lot of building
Yeah.
that's happening and it's led by a human.
Yeah.
So again, where do we
Absolutely.
start seeing multiple roles? Um, I'd also say probably the even better indicator is when you start to see more mid-market, or more niche, kind of businesses looking to hire roles like this and calling it that and being pretty clear in the JD that,
Yeah.
all right, I want this skill set. These
Yeah.
are marketers. They understand GTM. They understand the technologies, but then they can also build for those technologies, and they're going to test. And I think
Yep.
you'll see a lot of different folks from different spaces coming in. We've heard historically within this role. Well, gosh, can I even say historically at this point? It's been like weeks.
Yeah.
But the I guess the Profound folks, when they kind of coined it, they're saying kind of the AEO SEO, right? That person, very data driven, more than just kind of one specific area. So like content strategy is awesome and super important in this piece, but it's probably some of the people that are running more detailed tests in what's
Yep.
actually happening. They're actually starting to see how Google's scoring, and they're starting to engineer around it. So that AEO space, AEO SEO space, um, the Martech space that I came from, it's kind of my bread and butter. That makes a lot of sense. That also transitions into marketing ops.
Yep.
Those roles are going to be a big part of it. But again, kind of what I want to see is the market start to react a little bit more in that direction. But I think it's hopefully it's just a matter of time. Profound actually shared that about 15% of the Fortune 500, um, they're using Profound at this point.
Wow.
They are customers. That is that's a heck of a statement.
Yep.
Um, they're 22 months old. Like
Yeah.
this is a young company. They're getting massive adoption. Uh, People that are using Profound, they said it was 200,000 production agents have been created. And we'll talk a little bit about agents, but
Huh.
in the last 6 months since kind of their agent product hit the market. So there's definitely adoption. There's definitely interest. And gosh, just being in that room, you could kind of tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
you know,
and San Francisco is when they had zero click, it was incredible and wildly impressive. And it's interesting because I was able to go to um, the conference from AirOps, and I was trying to think.
mhm.
I think that was AEO Conf in San Francisco, and then there
Yep.
is Zero Click that Profound has had. AirOps coined the term or the role content engineer, which
Hmm.
I think is also interesting, and I think that really fits for where AirOps is.
Right.
As it is a content engineering platform. And then, I think, Profound looking at more of the insight analytics as well as being able to produce content and listen. So it'll just be interesting to see how that role kind of nets out and if that becomes a thing and, whatever. But it's always like, I think the saying like, first we shape our tools, then our tools shape us type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and you were able to get up there day before. Just curious the vibe and like there was, I believe, a happy hour.
Yeah.
What was the bar crawl like?
It was fun. It was great. A lot of tremendous folks there. Um, you know, just I'm one of those people. I'll just start, saying hi to people,
Yeah,
shake
just
hands.
talking
Hey,
to
I'm
everyone.
Dan.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you. What's your name? Um, and definitely, I'd say it's like kind of you had this. I feel this is like in the marketplace right now too. So there's the excitement of AI. Oh my gosh, I can do this. This is so cool. Wow. Like I had no idea. And then on the flip side, oh, there's a little bit of, all right, we're pearl clutching a little bit.
yeah,
What's this going to do to my business? What's
yep,
this going to do to my role? Whatever it is. Um, One thing that was really fascinating is that you'd expect it to be just a lot of marketers, but there is a much bigger kind of group of people. So
Hmm.
I saw a lot of folks in financial analysts or analysis,
Hmm.
and this would be from kind of like market research space, but
Hmm.
more on the finance side,
Okay.
trying to predict, all right, where do we think cash flow? How is it going to be impacted?
Hmm.
Um, there's super guy named Ian from this is from kind of the same group that owns what Hertz and Avis.
Okay.
I think it's the Avis group, but in any event, he's a financial analyst.
Hmm.
He was not a marketer, and he's thinking about AEO in terms of telling his uh his sales folks, also folks in just finance, what how are things going to change, right? Like, what do
Hmm.
we need to be aware of? And to this thesis point of like zero click, um, they saw a complete change in kind of how people are booking through partners. Um,
Hmm.
you may see this sometimes. I don't know how many people use it, but like there's a fair amount of business that comes through. You book a Delta ticket and then,
Hmm.
offer to go ahead and book you a rental car, a hotel, whatever
Yeah.
it may be.
Yep.
And he said that they were starting to see a drop off in that channel. But then on the flip side, you'd see a big increase in other channels. So, you
Hmm.
know, the idea of this like zero sum game, like everything's going away. I don't know that's true. I think it's an evolution of channels.
Hmm.
And now it's starting to understand what are the mechanics of actually showing up in the channel. And I think that's where Profound's really trying to be the answer in the marketplace, and not just a answer, but be like the best answer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely see positioning where they get that your incumbent companies are coming in, you know, SEMrush, Ahrefs, Conductor, they all have an AEO kind of analysis thing, but they're really trying to come at it from like, hey, we're actually like not just building a tool, we're leading the market in decisions. And there is some announcements around AI ads where I can already tell they're looking to literally define the metric,
Hmm.
and be the people that are ahead of that. Um, so they're thinking far more broadly than just intelligence at this point.
Hmm.
They're looking to kind of build a bit of a moat. But I
Amazing.
guess back to the bar
Yeah.
crawl space, I went down into the weeds of kind of like where I guess this is going. It very optimistic,
Hmm.
and I will also say, so this this Knicks game was on, so all of New York is kind of like tense, and they actually created hats for the folks that attended.
Oh
Pretty
man, that's
cool.
awesome.
So people are wearing these hats, and if you watch the game, well, like midway through, like, I don't know, Spurs are up significantly. This is a heck of a hole. I don't know if they're going to dig their way out. And they managed to go buzzer beater at the end. And I'll tell you, like the city exploded. It was something else, and a pretty special moment to kind of see everyone really, really rally around.
That's so
It,
cool.
it was wild.
That's awesome. Yeah, I bet. I saw that they were starting to talk about it as a watch party, like the
Mm.
profound, like, zero click Nick's watch party, which I thought was pretty funny. But I mean, as you said, like a pretty big moment for New York, and awesome that this was sort of happening while, you're up there and that type of thing.
Profound's definitely like takes a lot of pride in being a New York founded company.
Yep.
And you could kind of see that just throughout that whole night, and even kind of like into the next day. I think there's a lot
Yep.
of excitement there. So, um, yeah, just a little bit of extra boost of energy
Yep.
for everyone. So I think that made for an even better event ultimately. So,
Awesome. Well, getting into the talks and the event,
yeah.
what was your favorite talk? Like, what was the one where you're just like, oh man, I was like scribbling down notes and
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because there was
yeah.
some really tremendous presentations. Um, I I guess just to say that we saw some new products get unveiled,
Okay.
and I think I want to put that to the side for a little bit here. Um, But I think from like one of the presentations, really where I saw, I guess I've got to give the credit to Ramp. Um, and what they were talking about was kind of the really fine grained testing that they're doing. And it felt very much like, okay, what are we doing? How are we influencing these different AI agents, search agents?
Yeah.
And to try and like summarize it, um, they wanted to build some landing pages where they would have a Cloudflare worker. So this is just kind of like it's going to intercept the traffic to the website, and it's going to go ahead and share an offer to the AI search agent and say,
Hmm.
"Hey, um, you can save XYZ." But this wouldn't be on the static website. This wouldn't be on the main website. You couldn't find it anywhere. It was only targeted to uh, an AI agent that's hitting the website.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, really getting into pushing the limits of like where these, how can we test
Yeah.
and what are the things that we want to know. Um, so this idea of like marketing to agents, right? Like, how do we market to agents? What's going to work? And um, they, when they were kind of going through it, um, they found that they did not get the same sort of result
Hmm.
from the different agents. So you had ChatGPT, you had Claude, and then there was Perplexity.
Hmm.
And within that, uh, they found that basically like ChatGPT basically like ignored them like
Okay.
for so many days, and then all of a sudden started getting a good amount of additional traffic. Like
Hmm.
like actually it was starting to move the needle a little bit. Um, Claude ignored it a little bit longer, and then Claude started to have a negative reaction in that it felt that this was prompt injection. And now they're hearing from other folks like, what's going on the site? Like, I'm getting a red flag here. And they're like, oh, okay. And then Perplexity, just there wasn't really much there. So, from a perspective of like really testing um, how you can kind of get the agent's attention, really, really unique, really different. I don't think anybody expected to hear that. Um, but it does bring up a really big point of like, how are we making sure that we're providing the right sorts of answers? And then are there ways that we need to be talking to agents that are different than how we talk to humans?
Hmm.
I think that the takeaway there is that like, it's still up in the air.
Yep.
Certainly like do tests like this. I They made no statement of like this is how it's going to stay for years and years, right? It's probably going to change, but at present, this is how we're seeing
Hmm.
these different agents actually kind of come back with answers. Um, so a little bit of opportunity, a little bit of caution as you start to look how to, you know, I wouldn't say game the system, but just get those advantages.
Yeah.
Um, and you really have to kind of make sure that you're keeping an eye on some of this because obviously if they just forgot about this test,
Yeah.
you know, they may find that that Claude traffic is not great. That's going to
Yeah.
hurt them pretty bad. So
It's wild they're running
interesting.
like an agent only test. I haven't heard
Yeah,
of people doing that, but I mean, it makes sense. If you're, really looking to do something different, that's definitely where you're going about it.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah. So just run me through it. So I know,
yeah. Let me
started
talk
off,
about some of these others.
yeah.
Some
So
of
it
the other
started off, I think like,
presentations.
the opening keynote from James,
Yeah.
CEO. That's what they did at San Francisco as well. But then getting into just like the nuts and bolts, like, what were, because some of the things I have seen as well is, and I don't know if there's anyone that was talking about it, kind of like the pitfalls of AEO, where, you know,
Hmm.
I'm seeing people going in and using, tools like Profound or AirOps and making content at scale, and it juices your numbers for a few weeks. And then all of a sudden, like you get this massive penalty. And I think just like you were talking about with the LLM only, or sorry, the agent only campaign, like
Yeah.
all of a sudden it could be viewed as, something nefarious and you're getting penalized. So what were some of the talks where, I don't know, the reality of what's going on was brought to the table?
Yeah. So I think that there's some really interesting big macro things that people kind of need to know. Um, so G2, which is in probably the greatest position of
Yep.
any sort of
Amazing.
software ranking,
Yep.
kind of the actual ratings of software. It's open. Um, One thing that they shared was that, and this is based on a lot of their data, but then also collaborating with Profound, which is, by the way, I think this is giving Profound an advantage. They are getting access to data sets that I don't know that anyone else is getting access to.
Hmm.
So this is helping them hone some of their weighting, how they actually kind of like score and all that. But
Hmm.
um, effectively, G2 kind of came out and they said, first off, um, 50% of B2B software buyers right now, they're starting search with chat.
Hmm.
Um, and then this one really hit me and like kind of slapped me in the face, woke me up a little bit. 8 out of 10 um, pick one of the winners, meaning like one of the results from their day one chat.
Oh, wow.
So and an anecdotal, but this kind of is like right on. Recently I was searching for a neobank that I wanted to use for a little bit of something I'm building. And when I was looking for a good neobank, which is kind of like a non-traditional bank, right? It's all
Okay.
online. Great software. You can kind of do everything on your
Yep.
own. No physical branches, but that's the gist.
Yep.
Um, I made some queries and got a list of which Mercury, which is
Oh,
one of
yeah.
these neobanks,
Yep.
was listed. And I did research, still probably for about 3-4 days to try and get a good picture. But in that first kind of set of responses, I got what I wanted to know about
Hmm.
Mercury, and it kind of lodged itself in my head. And ultimately, I did end up going with them. Now I'm
Yeah.
really happy about the decision. I don't think I got manipulated, but um, back to this idea of like, if you're not showing up in that first primary search session and you're not on that short list, I mean, you could be the right choice, the best far and away,
Hmm.
but you're not showing up. Another wild stat is that um, less than 3% of the data that's influencing these results is coming from what you might consider tier one media.
Huh.
Um, and I think this is extra impactful for tier one media that's like gating its content. So
Huh.
New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they want you to sign up, Bloomberg,
Yep.
whatever, right?
Yep.
Sign up for some sort of plan. It's just not kind of showing up. Now, the ones that are open and out there, they will show up, and they can perform very well, but less than 3%. So, from my perspective as a marketer, that means that you've got your niche publications that maybe industry publications that where okay, do some real PR, look
Yeah.
to get some content published there.
Huh.
If there are blogs in the space, um, go after it.
Huh.
But then also the UGC side of it. So you have like maybe we call it formal UGC, like a G2,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's somebody, they've been verified, they're from this company. There's some sort of due diligence done to say, okay, here yeah,
Yep.
they are who they say they are.
Yep.
Um, and then there's the whole other game of UGC, which is Reddit.
Hmm.
Uh, Very much an 8,000-pound gorilla in
Yep.
AEO. Um, and that I think is kind of its own animal. Thankfully, they did have the session on
Huh.
Reddit. um, where Rob Gage of Reddit, he's their global head of marketing insights and operation, he kind of shared his perspective on like how you actually do Reddit marketing.
Okay.
Um, it was very human, but as we're thinking about kind of big takeaways, yeah, like this thing has happened, like that big thesis that James Cadwallader like kind of shared
Yeah.
from Profound, the CEO of Profound. It's like, yeah, zero clicks real. Yeah, the data is proving it out. This isn't just a marketing pitch.
Sure.
Um, so G2 kind of like helped close out the whole session or kind of the whole thing with this like, hey, this is what you guys need to know. This is you heard from a lot of market leaders, you heard um from even just high growth startups, but yeah, this is real and
Oh. Now,
start getting
with
on it.
with this change, I mean, was there, I think one of the questions that often comes out of zero click is like, does the website that we know today of a B2B company, does it go away? What was your take, or is there anything that you
Yeah.
heard from like, how does the web change?
So as far as it like from your own properties, they become more important than ever.
Yeah.
And you're also even seeing kind of like where brand becomes more important than ever.
Yeah.
Um, and there needs to be this symbiotic relationship between the two. So these really strong brands and I think the definition of really strong is the ability to pivot, the ability to kind of like keep up with where the technology is going, but then
Yep.
also provide the right story and the right formats.
Uh-huh.
Those are the people that are winning right now.
Mm.
Um, and for traditional marketers, I what I think is important for them is like in many ways, some of the traditional things that in maybe the last decade got taken for granted.
Yeah.
Really strong brand, being in kind of like brand sponsorships with partners, making sure that there's big content happening around that, whether that's owned
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
earned, but very much owned. I think that is now something that every traditional marketer should start saying, okay, I got to maybe crack open my textbook.
Yeah.
This is becoming more relevant again. Um, it's quite the dichotomy of you have all this like change on the technology side, but it really is driven by authenticity, but then just being there, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of like how do you hyperscale authenticity?
Mm.
Um, and again, your own kind of destinations, your website, your landing pages, kind of like, you know, event based or landing pages that kind of tie in other brand collaborations. Those now become really, really essential. And I actually kind of heard in many ways, like, how are you going to also kind of get above the din?
Mm.
So, if you're building out landing pages, you're kind of doing demand. Um, One of the things that anyone that's running this needs to think about and is partnering with like event folks is how do you go ahead and then get the ancillary attention? How do
Yep.
you go ahead and get people writing about something on Reddit, maybe
Yeah.
tweeting about it, or I guess Xing or whatever we call it now.
Whatever it is.
Um, but just like generating additional content um, organically, and then how can you like start to make sure it's still on brand? It's all kind of comes from one place. Um, so the web is a destination, a web is kind of like a source. You have to stay on it. That's really where I think some of the really forward looking people were headed. Now, for folks that don't have $1 million event budgets, which is like the vast majority of us, um, I think this is where your website is going to be the first and fastest
Yep.
place to go ahead and start to gain citations. And this
Uh-huh.
gets into like the fundamentals of how AEO is working. Um, and I think where Profound's starting to try and think about things in terms of agents. But if you're a marketer, um, it's like being very opinionated, but being very flexible all at once. and making sure that you're building lots of content um, that is high quality, that is honest, that is not trying to trick anything,
Mm.
um, and that is truly like very human in the sense of like this is something an actual like it's not just a bot wants to read it, but
Yeah.
a human actually wants to know this. Um, it's honest. It talks about it can talk about flaws where maybe your product isn't the right fit. And I think that any good content person can kind of figure out how to do that. But um, making sure this is happening at scale. And then this is where it starts to move into like, you're going to have to also let go a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is where agents need to become a piece in the production process.
Mm.
Whether you're using Profound, AirOps, anything of that nature, you need to be building consistently. And you get into little tactics like having date kind of information in the way that you structure your
Mm.
content, making sure that like it's very clear that you're not just biasing everything towards yourself, that you're being, you know,
Yep.
your editorial is fair. I think that that's something that this is now table stakes. Um, Profound to me, I think where they see the future is building a platform that's going to enable that kind of in one place. Um, so they're aware of their competition, whether it's direct and like AEO
Yeah.
citation. I think now they're also trying to move into um, that content production,
Yeah.
content ops, if that's a term yet. It
Yeah.
probably be
Yeah.
soon.
Well, I think what you're getting at is how, with all of these, the talk of like every time you open up Twitter, there's some new kind of like promise of like, oh, this, AEO tool or whatever. And there are some really good ones, and Profound is obviously one of the best. Is that it comes down to being authentic. And I love, I don't know if you heard that at the conference or just kind of came up with this, but how to
Mhm.
scale authenticity, which I
Yeah.
think is right. We can go in and find ways to, find efficiencies and a bunch of like we can do things like listen at scale, and we can, have all these different tools or agents or whatever, but at the same time it's like how to be authentic at scale. I think
Mhm.
that's really an important point to look at. And even speaking about events and also the role of the website, which is the website becomes, as you were saying, that hub and that point of truth. Um, like even doing this conversation right here, like, I'm really leaning in to try to get as many like LinkedIn lives and in person, and
Right.
just how to be able to be like, great, I was able to write that article, you know, faster because I could, speed up my research or whatever.
Mhm.
Now, how can I go in and actually like have more conversations? How can I talk with more people? How can I get out more? How can I go and travel more to be able to see what's happening out there in the world? Um, so yeah, Tim Sanders, is that who is from G2?
Yeah,
Uh,
Tim Sanders and amazing
yeah,
presentation. Got to chat with him a little bit afterwards too, which was fun. Uh, his kind of like it's funny. It's like as he's kind of giving these stats, 8 out of 10 of folks that are
yeah,
doing research, they're going to pick the first um, the first winners in that research. Um, he kind of like tied everything up with this all has to be human, right?
yeah,
Um, if we think that we're gonna, it's almost like if you think you're gonna find some special way to game everything, um, it goes back to almost more of like old SEO. Like you
mm,
kind of hear these stories of people doing black hat SEO,
yep, yep,
lead farming, etc. But eventually, when like Google would come figure that out, you get penalized massively. But I don't even think you really get to mess around quite like that. I
yeah.
mean, Ramp in their test, like I was talking about, um, if you've got Claude thinking that you're doing prompt injection, oh gosh, that's going to tank things real
That's not a
quick,
good
right?
thing. Yeah,
No, it's not a good thing. Now, this is a good time to experiment. I think people are experimenting, and there's kind of like an open, yes, do it,
Yeah, like
go for it. But you have to keep your finger on the controls
yep.
and really be looking at that dashboard of like, okay, what's happening? And then thinking beyond just this number went up, everything's good. Um, because there's so many different inputs that can factor into, a rank, but also even just showing up. Yeah, it does make things tricky.
Yeah.
So, do I think that the average, well, I don't even want to say the average marketer. Do I think that most people are going to start building Cloudflare workers and trying to market to the bot? No, that's like 0.02% of
Yeah.
businesses out there, maybe probably 0.01%. Um, but you don't have to be quite that sophisticated. Yeah, it's cool if you can.
It's a
I
nice
think coming back
flex,
to the
right? It's like,
fundamentals.
oh, that's cool. But
Yeah.
how practical or whatever, it's
Is
probably
it
not.
something that's sustainable? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, how much time are you spending on it? Um, I think now is getting into that time though where marketers do need to say again, I need to be able to scale production. I
Yep.
need to start taking the logistics out. Um, and this kind of like was where we got into a little bit of products and some of the things that they were talking about um, with where they're headed. So there's a big announcement. They call it AIM, AIM. And it's an always running in the background agent, kind of like an open claw type concept.
Hmm.
But it's running within the Profound ecosystem. Obviously, they kind of created a harness around this agent that's
Yeah.
just built for what we're doing here. And its aim is to start to take some of those AEO analytics, of which there are so many.
Yeah.
And anybody out there that's done some Profound's kind of like certification, you absolutely should. You need to
Yep.
do that. Even
It's a
if you
great
don't use
course.
Profound, there's some really great learning there.
Yeah.
Um, but you kind of realize that, all right, you start to think in terms of, okay, this is what I need to look at here. Um, this is the AI sentiment, and then how does this apply here? Really, it's all about building kind of a workflow. Um, AIM's goal is to be a logistics minded conductor in the background, um,
Mm.
thinking about the different workflows and when they're triggering and doing it in a way that's a little bit more intelligent than just like a cron job. Run
Mm.
this report every
Yeah.
Monday at
Yep.
8. Um, it starts to think about, okay, I found a signal somewhere. I can report on what, what's happening in, let's just say again, AI
Yep.
sentiment. And this seems to be a bit of a red flag. We need to know about this and then automate some of the research and get it to the humans that can then start to make a decision whether or not this is a real issue, right? So I think that's where we start to see Profound easing into different spaces.
Hmm.
And I think it's brilliant. I think it's
Yeah.
great. And I wish them like massive success. I hope I can be a part of that. But knowing kind of the restrictions that may exist in particularly like an enterprise environment where there's a
Yeah.
lot of concern about
Sure.
spinning up
Just data
agents.
residency, like the whole thing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also like what could these agents do while you're sleeping and um all sorts
I'm
of
giving
stuff.
them a lot of access to a lot of
Yeah.
information. I mean, you know, I remember when OpenClaw kind of like came out into the
Yeah.
AI world, and it was something everyone was talking about. But on the enterprise side, at least from what I experienced in NCR Atleos, is very highly regulated. But I was like, no.
Yeah.
Now, early on, that's a very smart move. You should not just like
Yeah.
throw everything at OpenClaw. Um, you know, worst case or no, best case scenario, it's going to burn a dumb amount of tokens. It's gonna be very
Yeah.
expensive. I don't even want to get into worst case, but this I think is where it's a really smart move from Profound. um, provide a means for marketers to do some of the really hard insights work and
Hmm.
then keep moving some of that into like what they like to call the logistics side.
Hmm.
It's not a decision node, it's a logistics node.
Okay.
So, it's these are the steps that get to the point to where now a human comes in, they've got all the information they need to know about, they can make a decision and a smart
Hmm.
decision. So, AIM I think is pretty interesting. You know, it'll allow a lot of folks I think to start off in Profound
Hmm.
without without having to build this giant, corpus of workflows
Hmm.
and or agent workflows.
Yep.
Um, Beyond that, they're starting to think about, all right, they're one of the leaders in this marketplace.
Right.
How can they become the owners of some of these metrics?
Yep.
Um, so they're going to be, uh, they're giving kind of like a new benchmarking uh,
Okay.
product that's going to go out. And this is something where people can actually start to look at their site, the things they own, and compare them against industry peers, against
Mm.
competitors. Um, and this is kind of the first year over year AI search comparison. Probably mainly because it's really only been a
Yeah.
year of
Yeah.
a little over a year, but like it's a year of this being real. So they're not waiting around. They're looking to define the category here. Um, and then within that, kind of, I think a symbiotic addition is a product they're calling Fact Check,
Mm.
um, and they're kind of saying it's the first AEO accuracy tool. So what
Mm.
it's looking to do is compare the answers for your product against information you've already kind of dropped in context around
Mm.
this is what our brand's about. These are product stats, whatever it may be. And then allow you to know, hey, ooh, is there a red flag? They had an
Yeah.
example um, where somebody had a prompt. It was talking about what's the best, uh, low cost domestic carrier
Okay.
airline, and it made a strong recommendation for Southwest, but then it added in some editorial. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, by the way, but when you prompt and it can be a very kind of short one shot.
Mm.
What's the best domestic budget,
Yeah.
whatever, with kids, right? Not a lot of parameters, just like very simple. You will get a robust
Yeah.
response. Very
Yeah.
rarely will it just be like, you should fly Southwest. It
Yeah.
actually, I've never seen it see that kind of response. It's always this paragraph. There's tables,
Oh
there's,
yeah. There's
you
like
know,
the whole
pro
thing.
con lists. And I think this is another area where Profound's really leading, but they're kind of talking about this in terms of unsolicited editorial, right? What is
Mm.
the amount of unsolicited editorial that shows up in a prompt in the response?
Mhm.
And for brands, this is where things become, I guess this fact check tool becomes even more
Yeah.
important because in this example, um, it then says, "Oh, you better make sure that you show up early because Southwest um, does not have assigned seats. It's randomized boarding, or it's just
Yeah.
board as well." But that hasn't been the case since 2025.
Yeah.
So we you could say, "Oh, well, that's a hallucination, right?" Yeah, I think we're a little bit past hallucinations. More of just like it's just got old data,
Well,
and
if it's waiting on like here's all the data over the last, I don't know, 20 years or however long they've done non-assigned seating, and then
right,
all of a sudden like you have not as much but more relevant. And now I do know that it's um prioritizing newer content and everything like that. But yeah, like that's I think a great example of what did you call that?
unsolicited editorial, or
Unsolicited editorial. Yeah, I love that. Was that another theme or topic that they had talked about, or is that a Danism?
that I got to give them credit for that
Okay,
one.
it's good.
But
It's good.
it's
I think,
great, yeah.
yeah,
And I think it's something that marketers obviously have to be really aware of. How do you
yep,
then answer that, right?
yep,
Um, and so I think from a product perspective, they're really trying to think about, okay, how do we cover all the different angles here?
Yep.
Um, and within that, then you've also got things like the Profound Index, which I believe you can kind of see on the
Mm,
website, the big the big kind of where do you rank, right?
mm. Yep.
As much a sales tool for Profound as it
Sure.
probably is like an intelligence tool. Um, so we've got that. They're going to be adding in some real time into some of these
Mm.
AEO dashboards, which is pretty exciting. Um,
What would
anytime
real
you hear
time?
real time,
What would that be?
so what it's aiming to do is be focused on kind of like lead gen, categories. Where are things moving in more real time? A lot of these kind of agents, if you're checking once a week, if you're checking once a month, you may see things change really drastically.
Mm,
Um, and what in the SEO world, you kind of know when Google they'd more or less announce when they made a big
yeah.
algorithm change.
Yep.
On the AI side, they're changing everything so fast.
Mm,
They're just it's hard to keep up with that.
yeah.
And some of those small tweaks that may not get any sort of it's not a new, dot version.
Yep.
Um, you you're just not going to know unless you've got some more real time kind of insight into what's
Okay.
happening. So I think that's where they're trying to provide even more value. One of the really interesting things I'll kind of like this was ties up some of the product announcements, but um Profound Ads Studio.
Hmm.
So paid AEO. Now,
Okay.
there's one player in this space today that we really kind of know and can observe, which is ChatGPT Ads.
Yep.
Um, they want to go and start building kind of an intelligence platform, even some creation tools around
Mm,
building ads built for brand. Again, they've built in all sorts of different ways to go ahead and pull in your context, your brand guidelines, product information, etc. Now they want to kind of be able to help automate on some of that ad
mm.
creation. Now, is that going to beat out some of the other like purpose built ad tools out there? There's some really tremendous ones. Um, no, but I think that they're looking to try and have their feet in different spaces in the market.
Yeah.
And certainly particularly if you're an enterprise, and you manage to get Profound in, that's kind of a big value add that, okay, I've got a bit of a one-stop shop here
Yep.
for my data, my kind of like analyzing performance, being able to influence performance, building the agents that then are pushing out um, assets that hope to
Mm.
influence. And then paid is just, it's so early that,
Yeah.
gosh, they're jumping in,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah. Well,
we'll
and
see how that
like
kind of goes.
how to be, I mean, there's so many parts of that. I mean, it's like the creation, the deployment, the tracking, the effectiveness. So there's a lot to figure out there. But just like you were talking about with having the mention within that first prompt response, which is almost kind of like the first page, it feels like,
Mhm.
that initial sort of introduction and being within, that consideration set is really important. And I imagine that the paid will influence some of that, or maybe you can, leapfrog a bit, or, who knows what.
Yeah,
Uh,
they did a little bit of analysis into this, and right now, what they are seeing, just for anybody that's like, well, what do we even know about paid?
yeah.
Um, right now, a lot of it is paid's largely being used in a defensive
Okay.
manner for ads to make sure that you are showing up.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they said that like Salesforce was dominating that space.
Sure.
Salesforce, look, they're on it. They're on it in a way that like I don't know. I personally, I don't know if I've seen any other brand be quite so leaned in here.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's like 80% of the time, regardless, like they're just showing up. It doesn't even really have to be direct, like the prompt is direct with commercial intent.
Mm.
It's they're just making sure they're there because they're not taking any chances right now. So yeah,
Huh.
interesting, right? Like interesting that we're seeing our big brands have that defensive position. I think as things get a little more sophisticated, we'll understand how those ads, new tactics get built.
Yep.
But again, Profound wants to be in that space and helping define what that might look like. So good. You want an active vendor, right?
Yep.
If your
Yeah, like
vendor's just
and
sitting around, yeah.
there's obviously a lot to build for this next version of the web. Uh, the abbreviation for that is AEO. A lot of this is going to start to shake out over the next, few years. And you'd shared some notes with me as well. One of the questions is like, are we in an AEO bubble? And James had made the quote something like, now correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, even if NVIDIA was to miss their numbers, that doesn't mean that the eyeballs are changing.
Right.
Like, yeah, like how are you thinking about that, or what else was talked about within that sort of
Yeah.
vein of the hype versus reality?
So behavior's changed, right?
Yeah,
You're not gonna put the genie back in the bottle in the sense that like, whoa, I've got a much better way to do research, to understand, what it is I might be purchasing, or even just like
yeah,
hobby want to know, right? May not even
sure.
have like strong commercial intent, but like I just want to know about something. Um, that's not going away.
Mm.
Um, I think even if you were to just look at the different companies that have a role in this, Google's kind of like the quiet one in the
Yeah,
big AI kind of kerfuffle. Everyone's paying attention to OpenAI. Everyone's paying attention to Anthropic,
yeah,
but Google is good here, right?
yeah,
They may not be getting all the hype that like Anthropic's getting around Fable and this and that, but they're a search business. They're an advertising business. Um, they are they're thinking about this and slowly kind of plotting. Um, it doesn't. I'm sure AI ads will eventually come, or in some ways they kind of already sort of exist
yeah.
in Google. AI
And,
answers.
and I feel like it's maybe more of a blended approach, right? So it's like
Yeah,
OpenAI. It's like, oh my gosh, you know all this personal information about me, which Google still does, but there's the mental model of like, oh, this is what I would put in a search box, and of course I'm going to see some ads in here and things like that. So it'll be
yeah.
nice to see how that kind of comes together. Uh, and I mean, I know for us, like we have enterprise accounts with Anthropic as well as with Google that is separate than like dated my my daily driver of like what I might you know be doing outside of work.
But virtually everybody has a Google account.
Yeah,
Many businesses have. Uh, they're using Google Apps for business.
yeah,
Uh, you know, somebody mentioned this, and it was just kind of tossed out there and then moved on. But where we start to see our own email being a factor in results we see,
yeah.
and then if you're a marketer, how do you make sure that the email that you're sending
Mm.
is putting the right signals out?
I've been hearing about like AEO through email, like that your emails have to like that they can take your public, more public AEO results. So anything mentioned there, or is that just kind of like a,
It
you
was
know,
it was very in passing because I don't know that anybody really knows exactly how that's working
yeah.
yet,
So,
um, or to the extent that it might be working. There's all sorts of privacy questions that come with that,
yeah,
but it does it does call into question how the corpus of your online life, um, how that all starts to influence results.
yeah.
Um, and I think that should also like everybody that like does marketing in different ways. Like I know we're talking about kind of the funnel is fundamentally changed. Um, but it also means that some of the same strategies that marketers have used throughout their career are
Yeah.
still valid. You may not be thinking directly at that, but
Yep.
dig a little bit deeper because you may find like, okay, I'm predominantly marketing ops, emails is
Yep.
my bread and butter. Um, okay, you now have a whole new tool in in your toolbox to be able to start to influence results. Now, the big question I think that you've got the profounds of the world that are hoping to try and provide that sort of insight is how do we measure success there?
Yep.
Um, you know, attribution was something that came up, um, but there wasn't yet a strong answer to when you have zero click, when you have kind of a big breaking of the traditional funnel,
Hmm.
how now do we track everything? So I'm intrigued to see how that evolves. And that's always been a tricky one. But
That's, I mean, the sort of white whale of marketing, right? Is like, oh, I put in $1 here and it turned into $5, and
yeah,
I can track that. And I think what you're talking about, which gets back to sort of the opening here, where yes, everything is changing, but the probably most interesting part is how, with the rise of technology, like a lot of this is becoming more human, and the
yeah,
things that matter are authenticity, having a point of view, and then finding ways with these tools to be able to scale that. Um, so, yeah, I think that's the thing where it can be a challenge for marketers, because marketers for such a long time have worked in isolation. You had SEO over here, you had a brand agency that would give you a PDF, and then an SEO agency that'd be like, oh, here's these, you know, 20 keywords that we're going to own these keywords. And I know that from, let's go and look at, who is it? Looking at Reddit, like, you're not going to own a Reddit thread, and you shouldn't, and you shouldn't even post that much in Reddit. So I think that's probably the organizational, or the shift in mindset that we're starting to see, and,
yeah,
being talked about at events like this.
yeah, yeah. Authenticity is going to be massive. Um, and I think that niche marketing, niche targeted marketing will become even more valuable. Certainly large brands are going to care deeply about it, but then folks that are, wearing all the hats, um, I think that, yeah, if you can kind of keep everything dialed in on, all right, is this authentic? Do I feel like I'm trying to pull one over quick? You may get a win, over a course of a week, but
Yep.
it's probably going to have some consequences to it. So focus on being honest, being
Sure.
just
I mean, it's
being good.
the a tough pill to swallow sometimes for
Mhm.
marketers. Like, oh, just tell the truth and be who you are. Like, that's a
Be
tough one.
flexible.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and be wildly flexible, because it's all going to change tomorrow.
Right. Right.
Well, any kind of other takeaways as we wrap up here? I know thanks for jumping in today and sharing like what you're hearing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, obviously, massive, massive thanks. I think if you're starting to think about AEO at this stage, the first place to look is going to be the content you own. So your website. Um, I think it's important to be open. Don't share the secret sauce to why, you know, your business runs and makes whatever money it does, but that was never the request.
yeah,
Talk about your products, be open about your products. Rich, lots of media is going to help. If you can do those fundamental things, I think that you'll win. And yes, you'll get better and you'll learn some of the tactics, but that's the most important thing. Um, I do think brands out there, if they're not investing in some sort of AI, AI measurement, AI insights, they're flying pretty blind. So I do think that whether it's profound or something else, like spend the money on it, and I would make it a pretty high priority in your MarTech stack. Um, yeah, you don't want to get caught out a year from now and realize, oh, we lost it, like our chance.
just
So I think,
didn't even see the change that it was
yeah,
happening. Right underneath all of your
yeah,
your
Yeah.
properties. Yeah.
And maybe the last thing to say is just with all of that, we're also very early.
Yep.
Everybody that's thinking about this now, you know, I kind of think of this is similar to somebody in the B2C space realizing, ooh, the cost of advertisements on Facebook and Instagram, whatever it is, are really cheap. And they built entire brands around it. So look, this is kind of a green field. It's a little scary, but you're early. So take advantage of the early lead and grow. Make the right investments and be honest throughout the process.
Amazing. All right. I think those are the clips.
Yeah.
That'll be good. Well, cool. Well, Dan, thanks for jumping on today. Thanks for everyone who was able to join in and listen, and we'll get some highlights here created and published. Also, Dan will kind of continue to go back and forth as this is all evolving and changing, but just thrilled to be able to talk with you today.
My pleasure.
Cool. All right. We'll hang out for just a second while I continue to upload. I'm going to stop streaming now. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Good to see y'all.